Hello, Evan's Wizard Repair Shop. How can I help you? Yeah, this is Bartholomew speaking. Oh, a bug. Oh, no, you did not find a bug. A crashing bug. Oh, that's even worse. Oh, crashes are the worst. All right, tell me what you did. What do you got for me? All right. Oh, I'm opening a new document. I'm on Mojave. Yeah, the new macOS version released a couple weeks ago. Okay, you want me to go on the left-hand side of the navigator where it says New Table. All right, now what? I drag and drop. Oh, drag it and drop it. Yeah, there it is. That's a crash. We have a bingo. Yeah. Oh, that's awful. Yeah, that's basic functionality completely kaput. So yeah, it has. So I'm getting a message. It says there are 2 items on the pasteboard, but 1 drag images. There must be 1 dragging item per pasteboard item. Yeah, I don't know what that means either. But I'm going to take a look, and I will get this fixed just as soon as I can. All right. Thanks for the call. Okay. Bye-bye. Oh my goodness, we got a crash, folks. It's affecting Mojave, and it's pretty bad. Like, you can't even drag table. You can't rearrange tables. You can't drag them between documents. You can't do anything. As soon as you start dragging a table, this thing just goes. So I'm going to show you how to fix it. So if you search on the internet for this message, you get a number of results. So we're not the only people experiencing this. There are 2 items on the pasteboard error message. So if you're seeing this and you search for this and this video came up, I'm going to show you how to fix it in your own program. Potentially, it's at least if it has the same cause that I did. And the problem that I had was this. So here's how dragging and dropping works with tables. It uses a pasteboard, and when you drag an item, it calls a method write items. Okay, so this is what it calls for an outline view, which is what the navigator is in Wizard. It calls outline view write items to pasteboard, and in this case, item is going to be the item represented by that new table. So you can only drag and drop one thing at a time in the Wizard navigator. In other programs, you can drag and drop more than one, or in other interface elements, you can. And what it's going to do is it's going to try to write representations of that table to the pasteboard. The pasteboard is the NS pasteboard. It's used for copy paste and drag and drop and some other tasks in Cocoa. And it's going to write multiple representations to that pasteboard. So I'm going to walk you through this code. It's a little bit tricky what's going on, but it turns out that I was completely misusing the API in actually in all versions of macOS, but in previous versions of macOS, misusing the API didn't cause a problem. In this version, in macOS Mojave, it's a little bit stricter and it causes a crash if you didn't read the documentation carefully. So I'm going to show you what I misread and show you how I fixed it. Okay, so I'm going to just walk through this code very, very carefully and show you what's going on. So this is the write items function. It's going to take everything that we're dragging and it's going to try to write it to the pasteboard. In this case, we're only going to be writing 1 item. So at the beginning, I check to see if the item count is equal to 1. And then there are a couple types of items that you can drag in Wizard. There are tables and there are regression models. Here I'm just going to focus on the tables since that's the top level item. So if it is a table, DS table is the table data structure in Wizard. So a document can have multiple tables. You drag and drop to rearrange them. And we're going to try to write this table to the pasteboard. Now, a table can be very large. It can have multiple columns. Columns can have millions of rows. So that's potentially megabytes of data, which we don't necessarily want to write to the pasteboard immediately. We're going to use a feature called a data provider in order to write it only when it's called for. Basically, here's the basic idea. When you're dragging and dropping within the same document, then we only write the table number, and so we can just re-index it. So we drag like the top table to the bottom of the list. We just re-index all the tables without actually copying all the data over. On the other hand, if you're dragging a table between documents, so we got a table, could be megabytes of data, I want to drag it to a new document, then we have megabytes and megabytes of data to copy over, and since that can be a slow operation, we only want to start copying it once we're sure that the dragging destination is a separate window rather than the same window, in which case we don't actually want to copy all that stuff. Okay, so does that make sense? It'll be a little bit clearer in a minute as I walk through this code, but this is the basic strategy. We want to write both the table number and a full copy of the data to the pasteboard. Okay, so here's what we're doing. When you drag the item, we're inside of write items. I'm gonna close this real quick, and this is the code that is causing a crash. So the bug is somewhere in here. It's only about 20 lines of code, and it's a little bit ugly, but bear with me here. Let's get rid of the navigator here so see what's going on. So I'm going to walk through this and tell you what I'm trying. So I'm actually going to go through this kind of bottom up. Okay, so I'm going to start here at the bottom where we have return yes. We have these two functions here. Okay, so we've got pboard declare types, and then we have write objects. Okay, now this is a little bit subtle. So declare types is supposed to tell the pasteboard what types of items to provide, or that the pasteboard contains. Okay, and this is actually where I misread the documentation. So item types, you can see up here, is an array of strings. Okay, and it's going to start out with just having a table index. Then if it's a specific type of table, here in this line of code, we are going to add another type, so the table type. Now this is the full representation. So item types, I'm just going to walk through the item types logic here just to show you what's happening. So it starts out as an array with one object. In some cases, if it's a data table, so instead of like a computed table or a stacked table, then we write the full representation to item types. And then finally we're going to declare item types, and we're going to say this pasteboard contains a table index and a table, and like a full table representation. In addition to that, we're using write objects, which actually contains the pasteboard items. So if we look here at pboard objects, it starts out as an empty array, and then it's going to receive pboard item down here, which is incidentally declared up here. This is kind of like a like Nautilus-shaped navigation that we're doing, but I think eventually it'll make sense. So we've got pboard item, which is just a new pasteboard item that contains all of the data that's going onto the pasteboard, and pboard item itself has the two representations. So remember, we had the table index and we had the full table. So first we give it the index, which is just taking this index integer, writing it out as a string, and then setting the string representation on the item. If the table is this data table class, then we additionally set a data provider for that full table type. So this is what DSUTI table is all about. So we're basically we have parallel logic here. We've got this pasteboard item, which has the string representation of table index, and then we also have item types, which contains table index. And then if it's a data table, we set the data provider on the pasteboard item and say this is the table type, and then separately we add table to the item types. We have two arrays here, or one's an array, and then the other one is this pasteboard item with multiple representations. And then if we go down, we're basically sending both of these representations to the pasteboard. We're saying declare types with these item types, so that one array, and then we're also writing objects, which is this array that has one value, one pasteboard item that contains multiple representations. Okay, this is where the bug is. We're basically doing the same thing twice. And if you look here at declare types in the documentation, I'll open this so it's a little bit bigger. Declare types. Now, originally when I was writing this code, this is some of the first like macOS code that I wrote, I thought you had to tell the pasteboard what types of items are going to be on the pasteboard. It didn't make a whole lot of sense to me because I figured you could just infer that from the pasteboard item that you actually wrote. Well, here's what declare types is actually doing. It's not to be used in all cases. Okay, so this says, let's just read the documentation for declare types. Declare types, new types. An array of NS string objects that specify the types of data that may be added to the new pasteboard. The type should be ordered according to the preference of the source application, with the most preferred type coming first, typically the richest representation. Okay, nothing crazy so far. New owner, the object responsible for writing data to the pasteboard, or nil if you provide data for all types immediately. If you specify a new owner object, it must support all the types declared in the new types parameter and must remain alive for as long as the data is promised on the pasteboard. Okay, this is a little bit confusing, and this is where my own confusion came from. But let's go a little bit further down here to the discussion. It says this method is the equivalent of invoking clear contents, implicitly writing the first pasteboard item, and then calling add types owner to the promised types for the first pasteboard item. Okay, so we're not done here. So this is essentially equivalent to calling clear contents and then add types. Let's see what add types is doing. I'm just going to skip down to the discussion here. It says this method adds promises for the specified types to the first pasteboard item. You use this method to declare additional types of data for the first pasteboard item in the receiver. You can also use it to replace existing types added by a previous declare types owner or add types owner message. The new types parameter specifies the types of data you are promising to the pasteboard. The type should be ordered, blah, blah, blah. If you specify a type that has already been declared, this method replaces the owner of that type. Okay, this is really confusing, but here's what's actually going on with this pasteboard. If you use add types and declare types, it is manipulating the first item on the pasteboard. If there's not an item on the pasteboard, it creates one for you. Okay? So when you call declare types here, you're implicitly adding an item to the pasteboard. Then when you call write objects, you're adding additional items to the pasteboard. So declare items is adding an item to the pasteboard and saying self is the data provider for these types. Okay, so we've already said here's a data provider for the table type. I'm going to go ahead and give you the table index data immediately. When you're saying declare types, you're saying actually create a pasteboard item, and for all of these types, there's going to be a data provider. And it's rather than being provided immediately. Okay, so once we've done that, there's an item on there's an item on the pasteboard after we use declare types. When we do write objects, now there are two items on the pasteboard. That's where this error message is coming from. It says there are two items on the pasteboard. I didn't think I was adding two items. I was only adding one item on the pasteboard. But that's where that second item on the pasteboard is coming from. And then this little business about one drag image. Okay, so declare types is useful only if you already haven't set the data provider using pasteboardItem set data provider. This is kind of a way to add an item to the pasteboard and then set that provider kind of retroactively. And I think this is where the confusion comes in, because the documentation that I saw about how to use the pasteboard is saying, oh, you need to declare the types on the pasteboard. Actually, I think it's better just to create the items explicitly and then let the pasteboard figure out what representations are in those items. So here is the fix that I used that seemed to work pretty well. Just comment out declare types. Now you remember declare types is equivalent to clear contents and then add types. So I'm gonna add a clear contents message here. So I'm gonna say pboard clear contents. Okay. And now, if I rebuild here on my slow computer, this should fix things. And it'll also let me simplify this code a bit. So I'll show you what I mean. So let's see. Okay. So I'm going to open a new document. I can drag and drop, and everything seems okay. So I'm going to make new table 2 and show you how I can drag new table up and down. I can create a new document and drag new table 2 over into it. Everything seems to work just fine. So that's the fix. If you're using declare types and write objects together, you have a problem. And it even says here in the documentation for declare types, it says you should not use this method with write objects, since write objects will always write additional items to the pasteboard. So that's the issue. If you are using declare types and write objects right after one another, like some example code out there does, you've got a problem, and you should rewrite the code not to do that. You can use setDataProvider in order to provide that, or you can write the object and then use add types after write objects to set additional data provider types. Okay, that is the entire fix there. I had to go through my code. I replaced several instances of this across my apps, and it ended up being really nice because I could simplify the code quite a bit. So when you get rid of declare types, then you don't need the separate item types array. You can get rid of that, get rid of this, and yeah, everything just looks a lot simpler. And then yeah, we don't even need pboard objects at that point. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Look at this. Look at me refactoring my code. We can just create the array right here and then release it there. And we've gotten rid of several lines of code, and most importantly, it doesn't crash anymore. So that's all I got for you. This fix will be coming out in Wizard 1.9.25. I'm also going to be doing a new Magic Maps release because the same bug is affecting Magic Maps and causing crashes there on Mojave. If you enjoyed this, if you learned something, hit the old like button. If you got any other questions or find a bug, leave a comment. Thanks for watching.